Hello, my name is Epi Bubble, and I sometimes go by the name of Simon, and this is a thoughts video. A thoughts video on Empires: Age of Discovery, the board game. This was a board game designed by Glenn Drover back in 2015. It was originally based off of Age of Empires 3 by Microsoft Games, the video game, and then they had some legal issues, licensing, and then they basically stripped the license, but they kept basically the whole entire game and the theme around the game as well. It's colonizing North America during that time. So you're going to be sending armies out and conquistadors and taking over the place. Pretty cool. The reason why it's taking me a long time to get to this is mainly just because I just wanted to give it enough thought to really let it sink in. It's the kind of a game where you need to play it multiple times in order to really understand the nuances involved in the mechanics of the system. So let me just start. For those that don't know, this is not a review. This is not in-depth look at the game. This is just more like my light-headed thoughts on it. The game is pretty simple. You are essentially a colonial power trying to take over as much land as possible in the North Americas. On your turn, you're going to be doing worker placement, where you're going to be sending out your workers, which you get 5 of each time round, to various locations on the board. So you might try and get them to go off and try gather you trade goods, or you might let them go off and be trained to go into various professions, such as being a soldier or a captain or a merchant, and each one gives you a beneficial worker for the next round to be placed in various spots, and they'll give you a very strong benefit for going to the spots. So for example, the captain will be better at discovering various places, while the merchant's going to get you more money essentially as you send them out into North America. So there are different worker area spots. The other aspect of the game is area control. You're essentially trying to get as much of your colonists into an area as possible, or at least have the majority of colonists in your area, during the end of certain ages. There are 3 ages in the game, and again, the person with the most victory points at the end of the game will win. The game actually has a lot going for it. So there are various colonial powers which will give you a 1 or 2 time bonus during the game. And I actually kind of like this asymmetry that has going on. It's not radically different. It's not like you're going to constantly remind your friends of, oh, you can do the special power. It's more of a case of you have this one really strong action you can do once per game. And it kind of is nice how the game kind of gravitates or just absorbs that power in it. You kind of have control and you feel powerful just because you have that power, even if you haven't used it yet. And when you do use it, you feel amazing for doing it. I unfortunately was playing England the one time and I kind of used my power a bit too soon. However, I still came second, so I think it paid off in the end. But it's kind of interesting how the first time you play the game, you don't really appreciate just how strong those powers can be. That being said, however, the game does feel a bit uneven or a bit unfair sometimes. You see, the large mechanic is obviously worker placement. However, there are various ways to get more workers. And this is not like a game like Agricola or Caverna in which you are going to be penalized for having more workers. No, this is a case of if you have more workers, you're just going to have more opportunities available to you. And you can almost like bleed out another player, forcing them to make almost bad choices, so to speak. There are a few spots where you can place a worker down and not get anything for that worker, which is cruciating when you play this game. The game is also very plentiful in how it gives you workers, but if you're not one of the people that gets those extra workers, it can feel a bit unfair. So you might spend your turn going last, and you still end up placing all your workers before everyone else. This is fine in a game like Feast for Odin, where you can place a lot of your workers, but you get a really strong action for it. In this, because you're competing with players on spots, it doesn't really work. It is great to always get a soldier every round, but it feels a bit unfair to the person who doesn't get the soldier every round, because again, it's that leverage of having those extra workers at your disposal. Likewise, going first doesn't really seem to have a lot of benefit to it, but if you secure the first spot a lot of times, you can almost guarantee to always get a trade ship. So trade ships are kind of a wild resource that you can use, and you're trying to do set collection and get enough trade goods, which will give you income during the certain rounds. That is quite cool, the way you can use it as a wild resource, but only one person gets it. So it comes back to the whole worker placement issue, where you might send 3 people to try and get that ship, where your opponent will just send 3 as well, but because he's first player, he gets the deciding vote, essentially, and he gets to do tiebreakers. So it means all those workers that you sent are essentially wasted. There's a lot of times in this game where it feels like the game's cheating you. And again, this might be because I'm not that skilled in it. I mean, I've only played it twice, and these are my initial thoughts on it. But it does feel like you're not getting enough out of your workers, and sometimes the game is just like, yeah, that's fine. You're just not going to get anything out of it. Another example of this is in the discovery element. So the discovery element is where you pile people onto the docks, waiting for them to go to the new world, and you're essentially going to try and lift up a tile on the board, depending on which area you go to, and see if you can conquer it. It's probably a nice way of saying you kill all the locals and take their resources. So, for example, you might send 3 people to go. You might send a soldier and 2 of your peasants to try and take over this world or this land, and you end up just getting your ass kicked because it's actually a 4-power tile, and that means you kind of lose everyone. It feels just terrible because you don't really get anything back from that. You have ways of mitigating this by sending more people, but then it just becomes really just luck-based. The game does do a handy job of telling you what the percentages are, but doesn't do a handy job of trying to mitigate those percentages or swing them to your favor. Just basically, if you send 5 people, you're guaranteed, and if you send anything less, you're just risking it. And sometimes people do get really, really lucky, which is kind of annoying. For example, in my case, I sent 5 people. I sent 3 soldiers and 2 peasants to conquer Florida. It wasn't Florida, it was Virginia. And it ends up just being a one power tile, which means I don't get a lot for it. I get obviously the victory points, which aren't a lot because it's a 1 power tile, and I don't get a lot of money because money is calculated by how much power that tile really has and how many soldiers you use to conquer it. So I sent 5 people and I ended up getting 5 money, where my friend, he sent 3 people, 2 of them were soldiers, and he ended up getting a 3, and he ends up getting 15 money. I'm exaggerating to some degrees. The prices are probably not that different, but it did feel like that. It really did feel like, oh, I just got screwed and there was not much I can do about it. Now, I should point out there are variants in the book where you can pay money to explore a tile, or at least see what a tile is before you go to it. That's fine, but it probably shouldn't be a variant if it feels like is needed in the game by itself. And I want to say, is that because I've only played a few times that I feel like this game is being unfair to me, or is it because I'm still very new to the game and I don't know the subtle nuances of how the game plays out? Is it better for me just to wait and pile on people and then go out, or is it silly of me taking those risks, or should I be taking those risks, and that's just part of the game? Likewise, is this the building costs as well. Some buildings just give you a one-time bonus. Other buildings are going to give you some really powerful abilities, like getting a worker every turn or getting a missionary each turn. And it's nice to get hold of those buildings, but there can be some contention. What was kind of annoying at the end of all 6 ages, 2 of us just didn't have any money to afford those buildings, and the other 2 who had been very much building up a large collection based on the buildings they had got previously were just able to buy out almost everything under our noses, and there wasn't much we could do about it. So we had to pursue the aspect of area control. Area control is interesting. You're essentially just sending people to stand on a place until they get counted for victory points. You can send soldiers and then do a war action, which allows you to kill off people, but soldiers will fire back at each other. So you don't really want to, because then it just becomes a 1-for-1 trade and doesn't really get you anything. It's kind of cool though. It's kind of cool that you have this war element and you kind of can threaten war, but it really comes down to people using it. We found in both the games we played, we really only did war at the end where we could maybe secure or kill off a few crucial pieces, and only losing a couple in ourselves. So I had enough money to go for war in the entire continent, but unfortunately you can only go against war with 1 person, so again it felt kind of limited in that regard. I know I'm saying a lot of negative things about Empire's Age of Discovery, but the truth is I did really like it. Eagle Griffin Games does a really good production. There are some decent miniatures, I want to say. I want to say decent for what this game is. It is a worker placement area control game. It's not a grandiose dungeon crawler like you'll find from Fantasy Flight or Cool Mini or not. So the miniatures are at least passable for I know a lot of people, but they are acceptable for me. The components are lovely. You have these nice plastic little coins that you can throw around, and it feels great to get them. And again, the board itself is quite drab and beige looking, but it works for what the game is presenting to you. The theme is going to piss a lot of people off. A lot of people don't want to cover the whole colonization theme. For me, I literally don't care. I think it's fine. I think it's a good way of teaching people what had happened. And as long as the game isn't too silly about the theme of colonization, I think it's fine to have it in a board game. The game presents itself really well, and the action is quite fast. You're trying to think of, okay, well, if I go for this worker placement spot now, I won't be able to do it later, and if I should go for it then, I can grab this trade good, but then there's a nice level of thinkiness to it. Likewise, just of how soon you get your eyes out onto the board, you kind of contest these areas, and you kind of can be a bit of a threatening power. There's a lot of nice aspects to the game, and I like it as a whole. My biggest issue is because of the game's internal unfairness that it lets off. I don't really think I want to invest into this game. I like it. I like Eagle Griffin games, but I think maybe the game needs a few more tweaks to it. I think maybe if they can get a second edition out that doesn't involve this kind of level of unfairness, then possibly I would look at picking it up. At this moment in time, I'm happy to play it, but there's nothing driving me to get it. And that's really the gist of everything. I like it, I really like it, but there are a couple of nagging issues that really bring the game down for me. Unfortunately, that's just the state of things. You know, in a world where there's so many games out there, you have to compete with the best, and I think Age of Discovery does a good 75% job of being a good board game. But at the end of the day, I would rather play something like Archipelago for that kind of a feeling of colonizing a new world. I would rather play something like Commit if I want to do a nice area control game and have elements of combat. Again, Age of Empires, or Age of Discovery, I should rather say, is not a bad game. This is a really good game to add to your collection, but I do hesitate caution. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. I would like to hear what you guys think about it. I know this review was a bit late, but I am planning a couple of new things to do just before the end of the year, so look forward to that. And if you want to see what those things are, remember to hit subscribe on the channel. And of course, if you like this video, hit the like button. And of course, please leave a comment. I love hearing what you guys say about games. I love hearing if you agree with my decision on these reviews, or if you just think I'm talking complete nonsense. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.